Okay,
There we
we're
go.
live already. Hey
Yay!
everyone, thank you for joining already. My name is Jessica Ann. I am an author. I'm also I have a publication here on Substack called Wildest Dreams. And then also we've started to do weekly indie author spotlights because we wanted to be able to give back to other indie authors who are also along their own writing journeys and publishing books. And we know how hard it is to put yourself out there, to get your book noticed. So this is our little bit a way of giving back to other authors, especially here on Substack. And then I'm going to pass it over to Jaylon to introduce herself and what she writes about here on Substack too.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining. My name is Jaylan. I represent One Brilliant Arc. We do editing and writing coaching and support authors along their storytelling journey here on Substack. And we're super excited for this opportunity to talk with Ashli O'Connell. So I will let you introduce yourself and share a little bit about what you write.
Yeah, so my name is Ashli O'Connell, and I am getting ready to publish my debut novel. So my history is in journalism and marketing and PR. So I've been a writer kind of my whole life and certainly for my whole career. But I made this switch to fiction, which uses all kind of different muscles,
Yes, it does.
starting from scratch. But yeah, I'm getting ready to publish my first novel, Emmaline.
That's
So
awesome.
exciting. And we
Yes.
do have a super exciting announcement. Ashley told us that she is ready to announce the publication date of this novel.
Yeah, I think so. So I know a lot of people that have been waiting for it, and I think it's time. So May 19th.
Man,
is
this is
the
coming up
day.
so
Yeah.
soon. Oh, that's
Yep, 4
exciting.
months, and I expect for pre-orders to be available within the next 2 weeks,
Oh, wow.
probably.
Okay.
But yeah.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Well, to get even more people excited about this story, do you want to tell us a little bit about the story itself and what inspired it?
Yeah. So, in a nutshell, this story is about a young woman. She starts out age 14, really age 12 at the beginning of the novel. And she travels from Liverpool as an immigrant in 1856 to the US, lands on the East Coast, takes the rail to Iowa City, and then ends up in the American West in the Utah Territory. She survives just a brutal journey, only to find that when she arrives, she's been promised as a polygamist wife to a man who's twice her age. She's still 14. She doesn't like him. She doesn't love him. She does not want to be married. And she certainly doesn't want to be part of a plural marriage. So she has to decide, am I going to submit to this life, or am I going to fight for the life that I really want? And in a nutshell, that's what the story's about. It comes actually from a story of my own genealogy. So
Oh, wow.
this is it, just kind of complicated or weird to be in this situation, but the person directly in my family line is the man that coerced her into marriage.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
he was married to 3 women in the 1850s, and I descend from the third wife. And I always knew that. If you are from Utah, you very likely have ancestors who were polygamous, and that was not a shock to me. But I found out probably about 10 years ago about his second wife, and I didn't know her story. I didn't know that she was 14 years old, that she was coerced into this marriage, and I just blew my mind. I mean, I knew that women, or not women, girls of that age were forced into this system against their will, and I knew that happened a lot, but it was just something to find out. It was in my family line. That was my great-great-grandfather who we had, we thought of for all the good things that he did. And but I think the thing that really made this a story for me is, there's lots of books out there about Mormon polygamy. We're a lot of people are very interested in almost a voyeuristic way of what's it like to live in that system. And that's what most of the books focus on, is the lived experience within that system. But Lydia is the real woman that Emmeline is inspired by. She didn't stay. She actually found a way to escape, and that's not a spoiler because it's how that happens is the book. But when I heard that and heard how it happened, and this was in my family, it was like this is what they make movies out of, for a young girl, a young woman in 1850s Utah, which was cut off hundreds and hundreds of miles from civilization, no resources, to have the courage and the ingenuity to find a way out and to forge her own life, to me was so inspiring. And I just thought, that's going to be my book someday. So here we are about 10 years later, and
oh, wow.
getting ready to publish.
Looking at the final countdown.
Yeah. That is so cool that you took a real historical event like this, and then you're putting kind of your fictional lens on it.
Right.
But that it's also nice to know that it ends well with her getting out too, and knowing.
Right.
But obviously, I'm sure it was not easy, and that's probably what your book is going to explore. Is the
absolutely. And there's kind of another piece to it, which a lot of people don't know this history. I think a lot of people in the country understand that there were a lot of obviously there was this great migration of Mormons out to Salt Lake. But maybe don't understand how many of those people were European immigrants. During the Industrial Revolution, England, Great Britain was a terrible place, really. I mean, so much poverty and people living in squalor. And I don't think it was just the LDS Church, but in particular, they found great success, probably one of the most successful missionary outreaches of all time. But they needed to wanted to bring all these people to Utah, which they called Zion, all these words kind of borrowed from the Old Testament, the New Jerusalem and the Promised Land. And, they were commanded to come and gather. So many of them over a 10-year time period went out on wagon trains and that kind of thing. But there got a point where, especially with these poor immigrants, they couldn't get them there. They didn't have the money for the wagons and the oxen and everything that they needed to do it the way people were traveling the Oregon Trail or the California Trail, which all, kind of merges with the Mormon Trail. So Brigham Young had this idea that they would walk and push hand carts or pull hand carts. And so during 1856 to 1860, I believe there were 10 companies with hundreds of people, mostly who were brand new European immigrants, very poor, often women and children who are alone because they'd lost, father had been lost and they were alone, and that's one of the reasons they came. So Lydia and Emmeline were part of what's called the Martin Handcart Company, which is arguably the deadliest event in westward migration. They started out with 600 people walking. It took them 4 months, and it was brutal. And they lost, depending on who you talk to, 200 to 300 people on that journey. So the book kind of tells that story too. What was the motivation for her family to come? And then what did it take to get there? And then what happens when you arrive somewhere that's supposed to be a promise for a better life, and something much darker is actually expected of you?
Yeah, wow. For real. I think it's so powerful. You're speaking my language and getting me excited about this book because I love historical fiction. I think it's just so uniquely merges the power of fictional stories to communicate truths and help them come alive to us, and also the real life stories that we carry as matriarchs in our families. Oftentimes, we're the ones who carry those heavy stories, like you did, Ashley, when you were researching this and found out that this real story was in your family history. that's a heavy story, not only to live through, but then to carry as the generations go on. And the fact
Yeah.
that you're finally able to tell it and give it that room to breathe, was it almost like a therapeutic experience for you to write?
It was, yeah. And I think it was really important to me when I heard Lydia's story. I thought she's like a footnote in someone else's history. Yet she had this courageous, amazing life that deserves to be its own story. And when we look back into the history with Samuel, my great great grandfather, there are pictures, there are newspaper articles. There's a whole record that exists of his life, and then just a footnote. And he had 3 wives. And you have to really go digging. And fortunately, for me in the book, Lydia left behind an unpublished autobiography. So I really was able to hear her voice, to hear this story in her voice. But as I started writing, I wanted to honor her. That's one of the number one things, is really to honor her legacy. But she became kind of a composite character of all of the young girls who experienced this. And Samuel becomes likewise a composite character of all the men who would coerce young girls into marriage. And I say coerce pretty pointedly, because I think even if you could talk a 14 or 15-year-old girl into this, I don't we talk about it in terms of consent today, and I'm sure they didn't use that word then, but I just don't think a 14-year-old can consent to marry a man twice her age who's already married. And yeah, I really kind of had to reckon with that whole thing, and I wanted to explore that. One of the things, I've always been very curious in people's stories, Jaylan, like you said, that kind of being drawn to historical fiction. And with my journalism background, it, it was always kind of writing other people's stories. And the journalist asks, what happened? What was it that happened, and tells that story. But as a novelist, you get to ask, what did that feel like? What would it have been like to live that? And part of that is, it's really hard because awful things happened, and they happened, but there's this message of hope and courage, and you do have a voice. You can have the courage to question systems that don't feel right for you, and I think it's just resonant for any generation. My context just happens to be 19th century Mormon polygamy, because that's where my story takes place. But it's not so much an indictment on that system as it is an indictment on all weaponized faith systems that put young girls in that situation, because it's still happening today.
I would say it's very pertinent to what's happening today.
Yes, absolutely. So it's, with historical fiction, like you're saying, you get to tell the story of a specific time and place, but you're really telling a much larger human story.
Yes. It's asking the who did this happen to? And I feel like that is so powerful. I really love the wider perspective that you're looking at it with. And it's such a beautiful thing that you are giving these women their voice after so many years of them living and then dying in silence.
Yeah.
And now you're able to give them back their voice. And I think that's a special power that us storytellers have that is not recognized and honored very much by the rest of the world, but it's something that is so significant. The fact that our ability to tell the stories is what keeps that hope and that inspiration alive, and honors what other people had to live through, and gives us strength to live through some of the same things ourselves when we have to. And I think that, yeah.
Absolutely, because the power of story just it bypasses the head and it goes to the heart, and
Yes.
is more persuasive. Any public persuasive speaker will tell stories, start with stories. If you want to persuade someone, you need story. That's what really affects us, and I think can not just persuade us,
But it's a way to connect. It's a way
yeah,
to
absolutely. And I think stories change lives. I really do.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's something that we say here at 1
You
Billion
do.
Arc all the time is the storytellers are the ones who can change the world. So
Yeah.
if you are listening here, please, if you take one thing away from this, it is first of all, read Ashley's book, Emmaline, that's coming out May 19th. But also, please write your own stories because
Yeah.
please learn how to tell stories well. Tell stories that matter because the world needs them. If we want to see a better world, we have to learn how to tell stories that matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And-
that's the whole mission over here. So
I
yeah.
love that because I really believe everybody has a story too,
Yes.
Mhm.
and everybody can tell one and should, and
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
One of the systems. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jess.
Oh, no, I'm just agreeing with, like, the importance of stories. So, yeah.
Yes. I wanted to talk a little bit more about Ashley, you mentioned the systems that are built to silence us. And I feel like in a unique way, and I've experienced this helping authors become published, um, there is very unique systems that silence us in kind of sneaky ways that we don't expect in our world today. So especially in the publishing process, but also, like you mentioned, for religious systems. I've had a religious upbringing and I would still consider myself um, religious, but I've seen far too much that there's too many systems that have just become corrupt and
Mhm.
have turned into something that is way more damaging than um, and just weaponizing for selfish gain those positions of power.
Yeah.
And I think that is such a tragedy and something that we really need to take a serious look at of how we can change this and how we can bring reform. And by telling these stories, that's one of the ways that we're shining a light on this is happening and giving courage to some of those voices that have been silenced and encouraging them to speak. Um, so, what's something that you hope readers take away from this book beyond just a better understanding of history?
Yeah, the first thing is just a good story, right? Like I want the reader to feel like they've closed the book and they have gone on an emotional roller coaster, and I've broken their heart just a little bit and
Yeah.
put it back together, and it was
Every
just
really good writer does that.
Yes.
I want to destroy you.
Yeah.
Just that they've read a good story, right? That's the very first goal of a writer, but I think it's the sense of hope, the belief that you can question systems that don't feel right for you.
Mm.
And we get punished for doing that in our society. And I certainly have been because I can be a little bit of a loud mouth, and a lot of people wish that I wouldn't be, I think. But I've experienced that kind of backlash of speaking out in places where I was expected to be silent, whether that was, in the workplace or other sorts of systems, and have had kind of my own religious experience as well, and trying to find, where I kind of grown through finding what didn't work for me and trying to find out what does. And people don't like it when you talk about those things. And there's going to be people that don't like this book. I have said before, don't read this book if you're looking for a cozy pioneer story. That if you are looking for one, I can tell you about them. They're out there, but this is a story that asks hard questions. And I think people will fall in love with Emmeline, and who she is and the journey that she goes on. But I want people to be changed by her, and in order to do that, I'm going to have to ruffle some feathers.
Mhm.
And there's going to be people that don't want the history told the way that it is. And I think I even experienced this a little bit. And at first I did try to go the trad publishing route. And it's hard to say for sure why people didn't want to touch this story. I got bites on it. So I feel like it's not that it wasn't good. I feel very confident that it's that I think it's a good story. But I think it's, a lot of people are like, yeah, I don't think we want to go there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say very much like the traditional publishing industry is just that. It's an industry and they want a very certain type of book, that fits to, writing to market, what is
yeah,
popular, things like that. And it's not always going to be in my opinion, some of the stories that need to be told or
right,
the things that
right,
challenge us and to make us grow as a society, as humanity, sometimes have to stick out, like
right,
I
Yeah.
said, and question these systems, and that's what pushes us forward. But
Mhm.
sometimes it's going to be lonely because you're not going to be the popular thing
right, right.
until it is, and people, like I think your book is going to speak to people's like souls, really, and to that part of us that sees like the things that are happening that are wrong in this
Yeah,
world, and so.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to take a second and just highlight Joe. She left a comment and said
Yeah.
she was raised fundamentalist. I'm not now, but still I pray. Writing can be like prayer. And I think that is so powerful because it's kind of speaking to what we said earlier about writing is therapeutic. The
Mhm.
act of putting into putting into being the words that you put in ink on paper is something that it forces you to process, and by that logic it forces you to heal.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
that's exactly why if we want to be storytellers that change the world, we do need to ruffle feathers, as Joe said, surprise the birds, let them be confused and learn. Because if we don't do that, then when I said tell stories that matter and 1 billion arc exists to help people tell those stories, um, it's because we're looking for storytellers that can change the world. We're looking for the storytellers who can tell the stories that actually hit deeper. And like you guys were both saying, the traditional publishing industry doesn't want that because the art that makes us uncomfortable, that can change us, is not necessarily the art that makes money. It
it's
makes,
risky, it's
yes, yeah,
risky, and that's what I learned. This is not a business that is interested in risk at all,
No,
yeah,
and that's what it
and
comes down to, is like you can
yeah,
make money and I'm,
yeah,
like I'm hope, but they need guaranteed money and
mhm,
that's not necessarily what we're writing. So
yeah, exactly.
we're writing for a much bigger purpose. We're writing to change
yes,
the world.
I'm writing to stand the test of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll say when I went I kind of craved that validation, which I would say every writer does, right?
Mhm.
That's how you start out, and you're
Oh
like,
yeah.
they're gonna love this, and I'm gonna finally have this validation, and then that isn't how it works. And I think I I don't think the rejections, which you as a writer, you just have to be pretty thick-skinned about that. I don't think that bothered me so much. I could have taken a lot more rejections, but the odds, that really got to me
Mhm.
when I started understanding agents are getting 100 to 1,000 queries in a month, and they might take on what, 2, new writers in a
Mhm.
year. And
Wow.
I realized that I kind of had asked myself a question. Do I want the validation of traditional publishing, or do I want this book to exist? What is driving me? And there was no question. I want this book to exist. And when I put it that way to myself, I realized this process is just holding me back. This is time that I could be working
Mhm.
on this. And when I took it back for myself, that's when it got fun. I mean, did you
Yes.
notice that, Jess? It
Yeah, so I didn't go through the querying process. I decided pretty early on that I wasn't going to try to get traditionally published, but I did go through that process of like thinking like what do I have what it takes, right? Do you
Mhm,
like cuz it's scary doing something completely on your own and forging that path.
mhm.
When I say on my own, I'm not alone because I have this amazing Substack community and people cheering me along the way, but
But you're a business and it's on your shoulders to
It
do it.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It.
it
Yeah.
still is. But I also, when you just said that, it made me think too about your story. And like, it's about this girl who, who becomes a young woman who takes back her own power. And it's like you're doing the same thing with your story, your actual book,
Right. And I
And
never thought about it like that until both of you said that. But that means a lot to me to have someone else look at it like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's a really beautiful thing that we have so many women and so many writers here on Substack who are owning their stories, who are saying, this is me. It's not perfect. It's not gonna, but like just
Yeah.
putting themselves out there and letting it be seen. And I think there's something so beautiful in the vulnerability and the honesty that it takes as a writer putting your story out there. So
Yeah.
congrats to you for
Yeah. Well, thank
already
you.
doing that and
Yes.
sharing, the journey with us. And then obviously I'm not even a historical fiction person, but I already want to read this book.
You are carrying the legacy well, Ashley, and
Thank you.
that's a beautiful and powerful thing that I'm so honored to get to witness. And we're grateful that you're sharing this with us too, because there does come a time where you have to just trust. I mean, building your own box for yourself when you realize that it's hurting your power to fit into someone else's box.
Right.
Now that means you have to build your own box. You have to forge your own path. And
Yeah.
that again can be scary because you need that validation of like, am I doing the right thing? But being able to trust your authenticity and trust your gut
Mhm.
leading you in that way is such a great example that you've set for all of us too, to be able to trust our stories, that it's time for them to live in the world. It's time for them to go
Yeah.
do the work that they need to do. And going through the process of, whether it's fighting a publishing industry that is just not going to honor your story the way it needs, or whether it's battling your own self-doubt. You
Mm.
at some point you just have to say, it's time to trust that this story is going to do the work that it needs, and it's going to find the people who need to read it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm taking away from this conversation.
Yeah.
And you're just really encouraging me in that way to be able to pass that encouragement on to other writers. But speaking of challenges, you mentioned the challenge of rejection, and we mentioned the challenge of, trying to build our own path. But were there any other challenges that specifically were scary to you through the publishing process, and how did you overcome them?
The most like logistical, difficult, hard thing to do was choose the cover.
Oh, wow.
And then maybe that's not what you're looking for.
No, that's real.
But
Like,
writing 96,000 words, piece of cake compared to trying to portray those 96,000 words into one image on a cover.
Because they say don't judge a book by its cover, but people absolutely do.
everyone does. Yes.
So I had, my designer created 3 covers. I don't know if I kind of assume that's a typical maybe contract, but that's how it worked for me. So he created 3, and I had a favorite that I was very emotionally attached to. It was the one I'd given the most, the input on. But I did not want to make the decision emotionally or based on myself. So I put together a focus group and just made like a Google Forms. And I didn't ask, what do you like better? What's your favorite? What's your aesthetic preference?
Yeah.
But questions like, what book would you pick up? What themes does this evoke for you? What questions do you have? And things like that. So that helped me a lot to step out of myself and kind of make that decision for the readers. And I had people on Substack. I just sent out an essay, and I love the Substack community because they're not people I know. It's great to have the support of people that means so much. When someone you don't know says, wow, I'm really interested in what you're doing, that just is a whole different level, so just kind of put it out there and asked people were interested. And I have like a I put together an author advisory group of former colleagues and friends that could help on different things, and got, use other social media as well. But so that's kind of how I did it, is making sure I wasn't making major decisions for me that served me, but that were going to kind of serve this story and the readers. So that was really hard. Marketing's hard. It's I have a marketing background, so I don't think it's as hard for me as I hear a lot of authors talk about. In fact, Jess, you were one of the first people I kind of stumbled onto on Substack. And so I've been watching you, you were 6 months ahead of me or something on this journey. And immediately it was like, she's doing this the way I want to do it. Like she gets this.
Oh, thank you.
And so I really am impressed with what you're doing. Your book's on my Kindle. I haven't read it yet, but so the marketing it's not as hard as it could be, but it's the putting yourself out there. It's like the Instagram.
Tell me about it.
Haven't even like gone to TikTok. I don't know that I understand that enough, and that's very overwhelming because it's so important right now. Like, I'm so glad Book Talk exists, and I hope that somebody out there falls in love with the book and wants to champion it, because I do not understand that platform very well. So putting your face out there. Substack's easier because I know how to write. Long form content is so much more in my lane, I guess.
And that is the challenge of being an indie author, exactly what you just explained, of having, you have to have this creative side. You have to be able to tell a good story. You have to do that. But then you also have to have this sort of business sense and make decisions, like you said, about your cover that makes sense for your audience and who you're writing to. That's not just solely about you. And that's that process of like taking something that's so personal and yours and then like putting it out into the world. And it's like, okay, now it's not just yours anymore. It's everyone's. It's in the universe. And so, marketing is harder. I also have a business background too, so I think that lends itself for me too. So I think I have a little bit of both sides that do well together, that creative and the more logical business side of me. But you still have to learn all these different platforms, and
you do. You've got to learn it all. You've got to do all these business things and all the accounts and all the I see so many people, and this is not to put them down, but I just think people come to this from a lot of different experience levels. But like on Reddit, for example, in a lot of self-publishing communities, there's so many people who kind of post and say, I published my book 2 months ago. I haven't had any sales. Does anybody know what I can do? And, I'm thinking, well, you should have started 6 months ago. There's, and not that they can't be successful from where they are. Everyone just has to start from where they are. But I think what I'm saying is the most successful path is a lot of work early and almost looking at it as a full-time job, And that's kind of what I've done, is I'm going to create a publishing company and I'm going to do this like it's my job. And if it does, whatever happens, it's not going to be because I didn't try.
There you go. And that I think that's where a lot of people get stopped up, is like the not wanting to fail. That's where those like doubts and fears come in. They're like, oh, if I, don't like, and it's probably not even a conscious thought of theirs. It's probably a subconscious thing of like, if I don't try my hardest, then I can't fail my hardest type of thing, But then by not doing anything or just putting the book out there kind of quietly, and then it doesn't get any sales, they're like, oh, well, it's because they didn't market it. It's because, it's sad to see. And that's why we have people like One Brilliant Arc that exist.
Which is, that's so great.
Ready to do it all yourself, you can hire someone.
And I'm so glad you guys are doing what you're doing, because the industry is changing. This is pivot point for the industry.
It really is.
Like I was in newspapers when newspapers were starting to die, and how the internet changed journalism. I think indie publishing is changing publishing.
Yes.
It's just turning everything upside down. And but people do need help. There are people who have really good stories to tell, but don't have that background, don't have the marketing or business background or time. Maybe they just don't have the time. So as these things, businesses like yours are growing and making it, giving people a chance to tell their stories, I think it's going to change everything. I think in 10 years, we're not going to recognize publishing from what it looks like today.
Hopefully, and hopefully that it's for the better. That's why we wanted to be at the forefront of this pivot, championing voices that have been marginalized in the past and being able to amplify those voices to tell their story and find their voices for the first time. So that's the goal here. And I do also want to mention in the theme of championing other people's stories, Jo mentioned that the book that she's working on is Afraid of God, and the cover design for that, I love this creativity. It's a flat pea soup green blank cover with the title Afraid of God only on the spine. I love it, and it cracks me up. That's also really cool.
I mean, it's definitely different. So definitely, there's actually, it reminds me of the cover of The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. Do you guys know that book at all? I love that book, by the way. If you're a creative person, read that book. But yeah, I literally, the cover, I think, just has like a circle on it. It's like a blank, like off-white book with just a black circle, and I'm like, what is this?
That's like the job of a cover right there, is to make someone what is this? I need to know more.
Yes, for sure.
We can't wait.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Ashli, for joining us, for sharing your story, for being such an amazing inspiration for all of us. And
that's so sweet.
Going through this act, this labor of love, of giving someone back their voice and kind of bringing healing in that way. You're creating a new story, telling a better story for your descendants, that they're not going to have to live in silence anymore when they feel like a system isn't right for them. And I really want to applaud you and let you know that we're all behind you. We're all supporting you, because you're doing very good work.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. I'm really so just grateful for this opportunity and the graciousness that y'all have shown me, and the interest. And to the Substack community, I love you. I don't have Jess's following yet, but it's slowly growing, and I love every one of the people. I feel like it's brick by brick, creating this community that's really beautiful, and it's fun. It's like I said, it's just been a riot. I love the whole journey.
This is where the purpose and the power of telling stories really is. It's where our stories intersect and those real connections take place. So, yeah, anyone listening, if you have a story on your heart, or if you have a story that you have published and you want to share with the world, please message Jess or 1 Billion Arc. We really want to help you get your story told in the best way possible, whether you're at the writing stage or the editing stage, or ready for some advice on how to publish in the best way. We're here for you, and we really want to help your story get out there. And Ashli, do you want to let everyone know where they can find you and get pre-orders?
Yeah, so here on Substack, my publication is called the Emmaline Project, and my name is spelled Ashli. So that kind of trips people up, but my social media is Ashli O'Connell author. So that's on Facebook and Instagram. I have my website is ashleyoconnell.com. I probably will shortly after we finish up here just put a note on my Substack with all of those, and I know that I'm tagged, in your posts. So that might be an easy way to find me if the spelling of the name trips you up. But or just look up the Emmaline Project.
Yep.
That's
And we will
awesome.
link everything in the
Okay.
description of this recording as well. So, yeah, just check the description box and click on those links and go find out more about how to support Ashli and the work that she's doing. So, thank you again, everyone.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you for
Okay.
everyone who joined live. And
Yes.
I really can't wait to read your book. I have so many books now of indie authors that I
Yes.
have to read this year. It's crazy. But it's good. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. All right. Well, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your evening, and we will see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.